This conference will now be recorded.
Hey, good morning, Arpita.
Good morning, ma'am.
Yes, so let's start today's session. Before that, any questions on the yesterday's class, Arpita, or you have any doubts?
No, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Are you, I'm not able to hear you. Are you talking on mute? I can't hear you.
Can you hear me, Arpita, now?
Yeah.
Okay. It's just that I'm getting an echo from my end itself.
Oh, okay.
Just a minute, let me correct that. Okay, is it fine now? Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, better. Yes. So yesterday we saw, yeah, I was talking about we have to seen yesterday different types of connectivity modes or storage modes in Power BI, which is a very important concept and decides the base foundation for our building reports in Power BI. Okay. So we saw there are four different reports. So today we will be seeing what are the four different kind of connectivity modes, and when we connect to each connectivity modes, what are the use cases, when do we connect for each connectivity modes, and what is the actual difference. Okay, so import mode, just will go a small recap. When we go to the import mode with this method, what happens is the data from the source will be loaded into Power BI as we discussed yesterday. So loading in Power BI means it's just not like it means consuming memory and disk space, as I said. So as long as we are developing Power BI on our machine with Power BI desktop, then it would be the memory and the disk space of our machine. That is like on our local machine. Okay. So when we publish the report on the website, then it will be the memory and the disk space of the Power BI cloud. That is where we have hosted on the Power BI service. There will be a Power BI cloud machines, right? So it will be consuming that cloud's memory and disk space. But when we are building the reports on the import mode on our local system, so it will be the memory and disk space of our, as I said, it depends on our RAM, it depends on our memory. Okay, so it is on our local system. So that is import mode. So for example, if we take 1 million rows in our source table, okay, let's consider we have 1 million rows in our source table. Okay, and we load into Power BI without filtering. There is no filters apply. So we just load all the 1 million rows into from the source directly to the Power BI. So what happens, we end up having the same amount of data rows in Power BI because there is no filters applied. Suppose if we have a database with let's consider just 1,000 tables. Okay, what will happen, then we will load only 10 tables from those 1,000 tables into Power BI. Then what we get is we get a memory consumption for only those 10 tables in the Power BI. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is the spent memory will depend on the space as much as we load data into the Power BI. Okay, so but in there would be a question now. So what if 1,000 we are considering that we have 100, let's consider we have a database with 100 GB. Then if we import into Power BI, we will get a 100 file GB file size, right? That is would be the conception. Yesterday also, Arpita, you raised a question like what if we have more we will be okay, just a minute. Okay, we will be consuming more Power. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry, I'm having an audio issues.
Okay.
Is it fine now?
Yeah.
Okay. Just just let me stop sharing screen just for a while.
Mhm.
Hey Arpita, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Hey Arpita, can you hear me now? Am I audible?
Yes. Yeah. 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 Mm. Hello.
Hey Arpita, am I audible now?
Yes.
Okay. So let me start sharing my screen. Okay. So we were discussing about the input model, saying that we have the
Hello. Your voice is being lost.
oh, is it still am I not audible?
Yeah. Now you're audible, but sometimes it's getting lost and the voice is not clear like before.
Okay, let me rejoin then. Just a minute. I'll just make you as an organizer for this one. Hey Arpita, am I audible?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You're audible.
Okay. Just can you make me organizer?
Okay.
Or just allow me to share the screen, that would be fine.
How to do that? Means from where I will do that? Just a minute. Just a minute. Oh, now I'm going to make it. Make presenter. Okay.
Yeah,
Presenter
make presenter.
organize. Okay.
Make presenter is fine.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay. So we were talking about the input mode. So input mode in the sense when we have is we were talking, we took an example. What if we have an 100 GB of database, and when we connect to the file of the Power BI file to the 100 GB of the same database file, what will be our file size of the Power BI? Will it be 100 GB? Then if it is 100 GB, then how will we proceed further? Okay, so this question arose yesterday when during our discussion. So a similar way, definitely it will not be 100 GB file size. Why? Because that is not true. Power BI, as an I was talking about when you asked, is it Power BI has some in-memory kind of this one? I told there is no in-memory, but we have an engine. We have an Power BI engine, or we have a in-memory engine, but there is no in-memory. There is no in some sort of in-memory, right? So I'm talking about that engine now. So Power BI leverages, or it has the compression engine. It's of called X velocity. Okay, and it works on a column store memory technology. So X velocity is nothing but an engine which works at the backend mechanism of the Power BI. Okay, and it is called as Vertipack also, and it works on a method called column store in memory technology. Okay, so this X velocity, what does do is it compresses the data and stores in a compressed format. Okay, so sometimes you might have a 1 GB Excel file, and when you import into Power BI, you will find the Power BI files end up with having only 10 MB after importing. You will not find the total oversize of the 1 GB. Okay, this is mainly because the compression engine of the Power BI. So the compression engine of the Power BI is nothing but X velocity. So when the compression rate is not always the same, for example, we cannot say always it will compress almost to the very so I said 100 GB, but it will be compressed into 10 GB. It is not always like that. It depends on many things. So the many things, what happens is the number of unique values in column, then sometimes the data types, and many other situations. Okay, so based on all these situations, the compression will take place. So in short, Power BI, what will happen? It will store the compressed data. So yesterday we were talking about import mode. When import mode means Power BI will store data, and the data will be stored in the Power BI. How it will be stored in the Power BI? By compressing the data using the X velocity engine. Okay, then the size of the data in Power BI also normally would not be much smaller than the size in the data source. So I'll just show you an example. Before that, let me just make a note of X velocity. That is very important concept which we spoke about now. Okay, it's called X velocity. Okay, it is a backend mechanism. It is a backend mechanism which is used to compress the data set size. Okay, this is X velocity. So if we go to an example, what I was trying to say is, So let's take an example. So let's go to, I currently don't have that huge file, but I can show you an example how does it works. So for example, we have the Superstore Excel file, right? Okay. So you can see this total size of this file. So Superstore file size is 1350 KB. Okay. So when we import and store, what happens? So let us go and do that demonstration. So I'm just connecting to the 1350 file. So you can see here, I'm just connecting to the Superstore file. I'm connecting, and let me import the data into the Power BI. So once after importing data into Power BI, what will happen? So this X velocity built-in mechanism, or this built-in engine in Power BI, what does it do is like it compress our data. It compress our data with it is following with the Vertipack formula at the back end. It is using some algorithms at the end. So it will compress our data, and it will like it will make our data available also, but it will also compress our data at the column level format. Okay, let's see how does it work. So now I'm just importing this data, and the data is getting loaded into the Power BI using the import mode.
Okay. So is there any limit, like the file size should not be higher than this? Is there any
Yes,
limit for import mode?
yes, it is there. Yes. That is where we will come into the next topic. The what are the differences between, and what is the limitation and pros? Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you see, the data has been loaded now, and it is similar way, whatever we have in Excel, the same. We didn't apply any filter as we saw. We imported all the entire data and entire table into Power BI. Okay. So now what happens? Now let me save this. Let me save this report. Okay. Let me save in the same folder. So I will just name it as X velocity test. Okay, after saving, what will happen? So I just save this. Okay, now if I go back to my folder, that is Power BI demo folder, if I go, see, you can see my data file was 1350 KB. Okay, but my X velocity is 732 KB. It is almost half of size of my data source, half of my size almost. Okay, so what is happening is, similar way, if we import like 100 GB of file, 100 GB of data source files, it will not, the file size will not be 100 GB. So since it has a X velocity and the compression engine, it will compress the data using the backend mechanism and provide us the data. Okay.
Okay.
So that is the X velocity, and this is also a very important topic. They will ask what does X velocity do, or how does X velocity work in the Power BI. So this is also one of the major or important questions, interview question in the interviews for the Power BI interviews. Okay, so yes, going to the next one. So we saw this. We saw these are the features for the import mode, and how does it work based on import mode works based on the compression engine. So next, what is the pros and cons of this method? Okay, of this import method. So import method, it has its own pros and cons. For example, if you connect the Power BI reports in using an import mode, what happens is that we have the full functional Power BI. So the complete Power BI, all the functionalities will work on the on the import mode. So with this method, we, as I said, we get Power BI fully functional. You can use Power Query to combine the data from multiple sources. So what I'm talking is, we have all the data planes enabled when we are using the Power BI. I mean, in using the import mode, we have the Power Query also. We can go to the Power Query, and that option is also available, and we can combine data from multiple data sources, or DAX, or write DAX, advanced intelligence DAX, or we can use the visualizations, we can use the custom visuals, and there will be no limitation in the functionality of Power BI using this components. Okay, we can use all the components using the import method. But we have the cons. The cons is size limitation. Okay, as we spoke about just a few minutes back, it has its own size limitations. So what is its size limitation? Okay, let me just write about import, the difference. Okay, so let's write about the import difference. So import mode, features, let me name it as features, because I'll be typing both on the cons and pros. Okay, so first one is data set size. So this data set size is 1 GB size for import mode. Okay, this is the main major limitation from import mode. So because of this reason only, we will be choosing either a direct query or the live connection. But this is the major, very major drawback for import mode. Okay, but other than that, as we said, Power BI is functional. We will have Power BI
Fully
is
functional.
fully functional. Yes, it's fully functional, because there is no if you use data set like yesterday we saw, when we were using direct query, when we were using live to like a data component was not there, it was not visible, and we will not be able to create any table, and few of the DAX functions will not work, few of the Power Query transformation will not work. So we have all the kind of different limitations for its direct query and live also. But Power BI, except the data set size, right? Other than that, everything is possible in using in import mode for the Power BI import mode features. Okay, so this, let me complete. Power BI is fully Power BI is fully functional for the import
Import.
mode. Okay, so second point is data set size, which we were discussing. So then next is the what we have one more drawback is data is not live in import mode, correct? So we have to do it with the refresh button, or once it is scheduled, we have to schedule the refresh on the service. So we need to do schedule refresh for the latest data or the live data. Okay, so these are the features for import mode. So yeah, these are the features for import mode. So coming to the size limitation, what is the size limitation? So with this method, suppose let's consider we have a limitation on the size of the model. Okay, so if we are considering the Power BI model, let's say usually models cannot be more than 1 GB, or let's say file. Okay, if we are using and also this import mode depends on the premium license. Okay, on the licensing type. So suppose, as I said in the first class, we have like 4 different types of license. One would be free, one would be pro, one would be premium per capacity, and would be premium per user. Okay, so the data file, the size of the data depends on when we are using import mode, the size of the data depends on the license also, not on the desktop. When you're developing, the license will not come into picture. So it is completely separate. So you can just import whichever you have data, and you can the compression engine will do its work, and you can do the report builds on your desktop. But this topic comes when after publishing. So when you're publishing onto the service, okay, you saw that we have the data set size as 1 GB size. But how can we publish if suppose if it is crossing 1 GB? This 1 GB is after all the compressions method is applied, and after all the compression X velocity technique is applied. After that, the final is 1 GB size. Okay, it's not before the compression, it is after the compression, it is 1 GB size. So after that also, if my file is facing a problem, or if my data import method has more than crossing the 1 GB file, when we are publishing, how does it hack, or how does it take? Will it give an error, or how does? So this is where the licensing comes into picture again. So if we are using the premium Power BI premium capacity, or Power BI Premium per user license, then we will have the maximum up to 10 GB in our account. So for each our accounts, we will have the 10 GB maximum file. So it's not 1 GB, it is 10 GB when we are using premium capacity or premium per license when we are publishing. Okay. So again, when we are using, and it also allows up to, when it Power BI Premium, okay, it allows up to having the 400 GB of the size model. For files data sources, it will have 10 GB. For models, suppose if you're considering models, it will have up to 400 GB of the model can be loaded into the Power BI website or can be loaded into the Power BI service when we are using the Power BI Premium capacity or Power BI Premium per user licenses types. But if you are using the report server, as I said, we have a one more component model that is called Power BI report server, where we will be working on the on-premises data sources, where the report publish also will happen on the on-premises report server. For that, the size limitation is 2 GB. Okay, but for us currently what we are using, that is compression. We're using the compression engine and using the normal pro license, just a normal pro license where we are paying $10 per month for per user. For that, the we have the limitation is just 1 GB. Okay, that is the one of the drawback which we have. So how to overcome then this? Suppose we are not ready to pay for premium licenses, or but our data set is more, and how do we overcome it? So then they introduce the direct query concept, this composite model concept, and the live connection concepts. So let's see that. Okay. Yes, let's see that. Next, so based on this, the next method was introduced, that is direct query. So the direct query got introduced mainly for the data size drawback for the import mode. Okay, so coming to direct query. Direct query, as we saw yesterday, it is a direct connection to the data source, correct? It will not store any data into the Power BI model or into the Power BI file. It will be the Power BI will be the visualization layer for the direct query. But the query data from the data source, like every time when we hit the refresh button, what happens? It will not refresh on the Power BI. It will go back to the data source. It will get the data from the, it will get the refresh data from the backend, and it will show, or it will give a picture on the Power BI end. Okay, in Power BI, it will only store metadata of tables, table names, column names, or relationship or table data, but not the data which we saw yesterday, where the data pane was disappeared for us when we connected to the Power BI. Okay, and the Power BI file size also, it will be much smaller, because we are the data is not stored in the Power BI file, right? Only the metadata will be stored. So that is why Power BI file size also will be much smaller. It will never cross more than 10 MB, even though if you are using the huge database, or when you're connecting to the huge models also, it will never cross more than 10 KB, or more than more than 100 KB, it will never cross when you're using the direct query. Okay, and direct query, it has its own limitations. So the limitation is, the first one would be, not all possible data sources we can connect. In import mode, we can connect, as I said, we can connect any n number of data sources, 100 plus of data sources, and its function is fully available. But in direct query, not all the data sources can be connected. Only few of the data sources it supports direct query. For example, like Oracle, the SQL Server, Snowflake, then IBM Nets data, Azure data, then Azure SQL Data Warehouse, Amazon Redshift, so SAP ANA. So these kind of data sources can be connected into the can be connected to direct query. So let me just let me just list on the direct query, like how we list on the features for report mode. Let me just list on for direct query also. So we have its own pros and cons. Okay, so the first one is no limitation for the data size, because as the data is not at all being stored on the Power BI file, correct? So there is no limitation at all. So no limitation for the data set size. Okay, that is one of the feature. Next one is Power BI. As we saw, Power BI is not fully functional. Okay, we have certain limitations when we are using the direct query as a storage method. Power BI is not fully functional. Okay, so in terms of what? So in terms of few of the DAX function will not work. DAX function will not work in Power BI when we're using the Power BI direct query as an import, direct query as an connectivity mode, and few of the all functions, like for example, data pane will not be visible, and a few of the Power Query transformations is not available. Okay, so this is limitations which we spoke about. Then other than that, what is one advantage? It is always live. The data is always live. We do not refresh. We do not need to do any refresh, correct? So the data is always live. So we don't do any kind of refresh because the data is always live. Okay, so these are the features which we saw now. So when compared to import mode, you can see Power BI is fully functional when connecting to the import mode, but when we are connecting or using the direct query, Power BI is not fully functional. Then second point, data set size limitation is there in import mode, which is 1 GB size, but there is no limitation of the data size when we are connecting to the direct query. Third point, we need to do scheduled refresh when we are using the import mode because the data is the data will not be up to date, or it will not have the latest data. In order to get the live data or the latest data, we need to do the scheduled refresh on the service, or we have to do the refresh. We have to hit on the refresh button when we are working on the desktop file. Okay, but in the direct query, it is always the data is always live. We do not need to do any kind of refresh. Okay, so still here it's clear. Any questions?
Yeah, I'm fine. One thing, just one. You said earlier that during the refresh, it will refresh only the source data, not the Power BI data. So what refresh you talked about?
Sorry, I didn't get your point. We only the source data, not the Power BI data.
No, just a couple of minutes back, you said like for direct query, the source data will be refreshed and that data will.
What I said is, what I said is when we hit refresh, it will go to the source data. I mean, it will not. It will go to the backend to the source, then fetch the data and come show us into Power BI.
So where do we need to schedule any refresh for that, or it will be automatically refreshed?
Automatically refresh. We don't need to refresh anything with respect to direct query. It will be automatically refreshed. So when suppose see direct query, what will happen when we are connecting to direct query, right? It is always live. So when you drag and drop each, for example, let's think this report is connected to the direct query. Okay, so when I drag and drop one column, so what will happen? It will again go hit the database. Now it's hitting my database, then the displaying the columns for me, and then displaying the data for me. Okay, so it is live, always live.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So let's move on to the next topic. So as I said, we saw the pros and cons of the direct query also. The first one, the limitation in terms of the data size limit and the functional full Power BI functionality, and also with terms of refresh. And there is one important point, that is compared to import mode and compared to the direct query mode. So there would be one question, okay? They will ask in generally, which method do you consider as the fastest method, or which storage mode would you be considering as the fastest storage mode? So for that answer, what would be just rough answers also would be fine, and incorrect answers also would be fine. Generally, you saw this different types of models, right? So which method would be the fastest method, or in terms of
Directly.
performing? Sorry,
Uh,
yes.
in terms of performance,
Yeah, not in terms of performance, just in terms of
I think
fastest, like
that
when you refresh, the data will be loading, or in terms of like that, which would be the fastest one?
direct query.
Okay. No, it's not actually direct query, it's import mode. Okay. Why? I'll be, yeah, then let's discuss on this now. So, import data is the fastest possible option. Okay. I'll just mention the, it is the fastest method. In direct query will be the slow connection. Okay. So why import method is fastest is in the sense is import data, because when we are importing the data, where does the data will be, like it will be loaded into our Power BI, right? It will be loaded into our Power BI on our machines. So what happens is like it will be the fastest, because into the whatever data we have loaded, it is into the memory of the server, and all the queries will be resolved immediately. In the sense, for example, what we will do is like we will import the data in our Power BI report, and the data will be stored where in our Power BI file. So the cache will be generated. The data is already cached, and data will be already into the Power BI. It will not go it the database, or it will not go it the data sources and fetch and come back, correct? So the data is already available as a cache. So when you're using the like browsers and all, you will have this cache cookies, or you will have this cache stored, right? So next time when you enter it, what will happen in the your name will pop up again, because the cache is already stored into that. So until the session get closed, your browser, the columns or the fields will be available, correct? Until if you're using the same form again and again, if you enter your first name or a last name, your name will be popping up, because you have already used it before. Okay, similar way, in import mode, the cache will be already stored. Okay, so since the cache is already stored, it will be the fastest method, and it is not hitting the database again and again. So once in a day, we will do the refresh and get all the data and store it in our Power BI files. Okay, so when we are using the Power BI, or when we are building the visualization, or when we are refreshing once up in the what do you say, in the service and all, right? Power BI will load Power BI connecting with the import mode will load faster compared to the direct query, because direct query, as I said, each and every query when you're using, or each and every fields you're using in direct query, it will hit the database. It will go hit the database, it will load and then come back. But Power BI in import mode, what will happen? The data is already cached and stored in a file. So it will not go to the data source or hit the data source and come back. So the data is already ready made, it is available. So that is why import mode, it is considered as the fastest method when they ask like which is the fastest method, it is like import mode compared to the direct query. But when you compare import mode versus live connection, then yes, of course the live connection will come into picture, not the direct query. Because why live connection comes into picture is most of the live connection will be connected to the optimized models. Okay, that would be like faster than import mode when we are comparing. Okay, but between import mode and direct query, it was import mode is the fastest and direct query will be the slowest type of connection. So direct query, why slow type of a connection? Because of the as I said, the data is not on the Power BI model or on the Power BI file. The data is always on the data source, at the data source end, at the source end. So it has to go at the source end and it has to hit the data source and it has to get refresh and then come back to the Power BI. So that is why it is slowest. Okay, any question here?
So if I'm being asked like which one to consider, like import versus direct query. So in terms of fast connection, it's import, but in which scenario then I will consider the direct query?
Yes. So in which scenario you will be considering direct query is, for example, the data set size of your model, or the data set file which you are using as a source, or if the database, if it is crossing more than 1 GB, right? At that time you will be using the direct query. Okay, you will be using the direct query. That is one scenario. Second scenario, the user or the client will say my data should be always live. Okay, I did not know, I don't want to schedule refresh like a daily twice, daily thrice. I don't want to see the data in that way. I wanted to see my live data anytime 24/7. If it is in that way, and then you have to choose the live direct query. Okay, so these 2 points to be considered, and then we have to see direct query. Okay, but also we saw yesterday a composite model, correct? So we saw composite model. When does composite model came? So composite model introduced like few years back. So why composite model came into picture is, so as I said, direct query, for each one, everything it will go to the data source and it has to come back, and it will be the connection type would be slow. Okay, so in order to avoid that, and in order to improve the direct query performance, and in order to optimize that direct query performance or the direct query reports, composite model came into picture. But what is a composite model? It is a mixed mode, correct? It has the import also, it has the direct query also. So what situation can be used? So as I said, direct query, the slow performance will happen. Each time it will go and hit the database and come back. So there will be cases, in few of the cases, when the architect of the project, or the architect of the data warehouse, when they started thinking about it, and doing the introspection of what can be done or to in order to improve the performance. So then they noticed that, for example, let's take this, let's connect to our SQL server. Okay, let me close it. Okay, let me use direct query. So when I'm importing, you can see here I have data, different dimension data, and I have different facts, and I'm using a direct query as a connection. So in this case, So when we started doing the analysis, right? See, dim date, okay, when it just consider in a real time of scenario. If we are having a in a business perspective, and we are building the models for them, and we are building the data warehouse to them, what might change on the daily basis? You might have heard in SQL there is a concept called SCD, okay, which is a very important concept. So kind of SCD you can just go through. There is a concept called SCD, slowly changing dimension. Okay, we have around 5 to 6 types in that. So that data warehouse, we no need to take care. But if you know that concept, it's good, well and good. You can understand a little more in advanced. Okay. So that concept, so it's just not how tables would be changing, how the tables would be modifying on which role or on which rule. Okay, so that would be the concept of SED. Here, what I was trying to say is, see, we have the tables here. So let's just think in the layman perspective. In this layman perspective, what will happen is like, we have, let's consider we have the from here it starts, correct? Dim account. What does it mean, dim account? Dim account, it could be by region wise or BU wise. Okay, so dim account, it might change or it not might change, or it might change this account. Okay, let's select dim account and let's see what data is available here. Okay, so I just selected dim account. You can see we have account type. So we have account descriptions, we have balance sheet, we have current asset, we have account assets. Okay, we have liabilities. It's completely related to finance. Okay, and this particulars, what you would be seeing is this would be changing. Okay, this balance account description might change. So for example, anything could be, if anything could be added or if anything could be removed, then this there would be some changes happening on the back end for this table. Okay, that might happen based on the user business requirements. Okay, so this will be changing. And next, coming to currency. Okay, currency also, like there is a currency defined here, and currency, for based on the currency, they have the values written, and they have the this one, I mean the values fetching. So currency also might change, because this table also will be changing based on the the values, inflation values. When the currency values changes and the exchange rate changes, this table also will be updated. Okay, so let's consider customer. So customer, this is a best example. So customer, yes, of course, each time the records can be added, the records can be deleted from the table, and the records can be modified. So for example, of course, names cannot be modified, but for example, maybe is address, or is email address, or is phone number, and is if suppose a salary, if he gets an increment, then his salary or his income would be like changing. Okay, so these columns might change. Again, we would be having the change in the dim customer. So we will not be knowing when the change will happen, and we will not be knowing when will be the changes occur. Okay, so for that time, in order to show the live data, we will be using the live connection or the direct query connection for these tables. But let's consider dim date. Okay, dim date is nothing but it gives the date dimension, where it has the static dates for the complete set of years, or the this year or the next year. Okay, it gives a complete date table, it gives the calendar table. So for this dim date, right, it's no need to refresh, or it will never change. Correct, dates will never change, time this month will never change, and years will never change. So the table is already written, and we have set of years for the next coming future years also. So for this, the what is the use for every time, if we use this, connect this dim date as a direct query, right? What is the use of every time going and refreshing at the back end and coming, and this, and consider dim date dimension, I mean dim date table would also have history plus future dates. Correct, it will also
Right.
have history date. So history would be it depends on business. Again, when they wanted to show history, it could be from 2000 or 2005 or 2006 or 2010. We never know. Maybe it would be having roughly, also it could be having 10 to 15 years of data stored in their database. So every time, just consider every time when we hit the refresh, or when we wanted to bring anything from the date field, right, what from the date dimension
table, what happens? It goes hit the database, then fetch the query and come back. So the time consuming period is, you can see how much time consuming period can happen, correct? So in order to and this will also cause the performance for us. So in order to avoid this kind of scenarios, this composite model or the mixed mode came into picture. So what we do, we import whatever we want for the live direct query connection, we import it first, and which we wanted, or there is no much refresh should happen, like maybe monthly ones or just yearly ones, or just 2 months once, or manual refresh. For that kind of refresh, for that kind of scenarios, we will be connecting those tables using the import mode, and then direct query plus import mode will become as a composite model. Okay, so this kind of scenario, this is the one of the examples. So similarly, based on the business and based on the business requirement, each business is different, each project is different. So similarly, they will have the use case scenario in this way. So based on that, we will be connecting on their refresh frequency, and based on that, when usage frequency, we will be deciding which whether we choose import mode, or whether should we choose a direct query mode, or whether should we choose both composite model, that is import plus direct query. So this example is clear.
Yeah, this example is clear, but for composite query like direct or import query, does composite query has some kind of cons, its own cons, or it's whatever related to import or direct query, that cons similarly applies to composite model also?
Yes, so both what you saw, the pros and cons of import mode, right? The same thing will be available, import mode and direct query mode, the same thing will be available in the composite model. So one advantage of composite model other than that is, for example, as I said, the few tables you would be requiring, it is large, you would be requiring direct query. You have to you have in import mode this data set size limitation of 1 GB. So in that case, this composite model can be helpful, because we are not using completely direct query, right? Few of the tables only we are using it as a direct query, and few we will be converting into import mode. So in that case, it is helpful for us. So in that is why nowadays what is becoming real time scenario is, people say that don't go to direct query, better go to composite model, or better go to mixed mode in order to improve the performance. So compared to direct query, composite model has since it has the both the world, that is import and direct query, right? It is having a huge advantage when compared to the optimization, when compared to the performance, and when compared to the slowness, everything. So that is one advantage. But other than that, all the features are same.
Okay.
What applies over for both of the modes, import and direct query, it applies here too.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so next we will be moving into live connection, which we saw. So three methods has been done here. So the next one would be the live connection. So live connection, as I said, it is it is similar to direct query. It is not same, but it is similar to direct query, where again the data will be not stored on the Power BI file or on the local machine. The data will be stored, and that only the metadata or the column names or the relationship or the data names or the data definitions or the table definitions would be storing it, and it will not connect to any of the data sources, but it will connect to the data model. It will not connect to the databases, it will connect to the data models. So that models would be SSAS, or it could be Azure Analysis Service, or it could be the PBI data sets. Okay, so this is about the live connection which we saw. So again, when compared to live connections and direct query, so this is also another important interview questions, where they ask if it is same, if it is both is not storing data on the Power BI data set, and both is it's the data source and come back for the refresh mechanism, if it is happens like that, then what's the other difference? So first difference, major difference, what I said is that with terms of data sources. Okay, in terms of data sources. So live connection features. Okay, live connection features. So in terms of data sources, there is a difference between the direct query and live. Okay, in direct query, you cannot connect to any models. You can connect only to the databases. That is, it could be SQL servers, it could be analysis SQL server, it could be Oracle, it could be Amazon Redshift or AWS Redshift, IBM Teradata. So like this, the direct query will be connected to this kind of data sources. But when live connection, it will always connect to the models. Okay, in terms of data sources for live connection, it will connect always to the models. So the models examples I have given, that is SSAS, Azure Analysis Services, or it could be either using the tabular format, or it could be multidimensional format and the Power BI data sets. So that is one of the difference between live connection and direct query. Clear?
Yeah. So, what is the advantage of connecting a model instead of connecting a database?
Yes. So model, again, it's for major, it's for performance. Okay, for optimization and performance. So this we saw this where we have this slowness connection, correct? And we also have this both data set 1 GB size limitation. In order to overcome this both, this live connection was introduced. Okay, this composite model works well and good. I'm not saying it will not work, but composite model works. Still there would be when see you if you consider a sales data, or when you consider the banking domain, right?
Hello.
The data transaction would be every day like huge. Each day by day it grows, it never shrinks, correct? The data will never shrinks in terms of banking domain or in terms of sales domain. Correct. Everyday transactions will be happening, everyday purchasing will be happening, every day the transaction records will keep on recording. So in terms of that kind of scenarios, in the terms of that kind of am I audible now?
Hello. Can you
Hello,
hear me?
yes. Yes, Arpita, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah. I actually I got disconnected once. So sorry, I lost that. What did you say about that model?
Okay, so the let me start. So the model is what I said is we have this in order to overcome. See, we have this limitation, correct? We have data set size limitation 1 GB in import mode. Then in direct query, we have the slow connection as the limitation, correct? In order to overcome both of these features, live connection was introduced. Okay, live connection was introduced, and in live connection, yes, of course, we have this composite model. I'm not saying, okay, I'm a composite model. Again, it's a combination of this import mode and direct query. Still there is a what you say, there is a delimitation. Again, it is not for the data sources. Yes, we can connect it and use it, but what happens is, like, let's consider in the real-time scenario. Let's take banking example, or let's take a sales examples. So if you're considering as a banking domain, so the transaction each day, what happens is, like, the data will be keep on growing day by day, it will never shrink. Okay, so in order to capture all those data and store it, just storing on a database or just storing on a data file on files will not be easier for us to, in order to go, or in order to retrieve data, and in order to check on those transactions. So for that, the proper data warehouse should be built. Okay, from that data warehouse, so from the data would be pushed into the data warehouse, and from that data warehouse, what does models help is, like SSAS models or this Azure analysis models helps is, like, it will optimize there itself the queries. So all this huge transaction databases, what we have, what this OLAP is there, it will connect to this data sources, it will optimize it, and this models gives us, like, we saw one of the example today morning, that is X velocity, correct, where it compressed in Power BI. So similar way, the SSAS connection cubes, or the SSAS tabular models, or multidimensional models, or that modeling concept itself, it optimizes the data, it optimizes the data warehouse, or it optimizes the tables and gives a model, okay, which helps us for our Power BI or for any reporting tool in order to connect to those connection, that is models, and improve the performance. So this both limitation can be overcome using the live connection mode. So it will never be slow connection, it will be the faster connection. And also you can the n number of data sites also, that is data size, you will be, when building the cube, you can import any number of tables, and you can build model, and you can give model based on the user requirement, and give it to the reporting layer, or to the reporting, any of the reporting tools, in order to connect. So this is the main advantage of the models. Okay, so as where this, again, it depends on, it's not always you have to use cube connection, or you have to use a build a model. It depends again. So it depends on the business, how their business is going on, and how their data is structures are stored, and what kind of usage they want. Whether they want it on daily basis, whether they want it on a weekly basis, or whether they want it on monthly basis, depending on the architecture. The project architect will be there, right? The project architect will decide on the data warehouse architect, or any project architect will decide on the architecture, like whether should we go for a modeling, or whether should we go for a data warehouse, or whether should we go for the storing on the Excel files or SharePoint files.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So that is about the live connection which we saw. So first difference when we were seeing is in terms of data sources, it will always connect to the models. Second one, what we saw is like in terms of it, the data pane will not be visible, because the data pane the data is always stored on the backend. Okay, data pane will not be visible. That is,
Just
it's
like
fully
direct
not
query,
functional.
right?
Sorry.
Just like the direct query, right?
Direct query, yes. And similar way, Power BI is also not fully functional here also. Okay, it has its own limitation. In terms of compared to direct query itself, it has its own differences. So in Power BI, in direct query, what used to happen, we used to write DAX. Okay, DAX, it has its own limitation. So here also we write DAX. Here also it has few of the limitations. Okay, then data pane will not be visible. Yes, here also data pane will not be visible. Okay, but other than that, and few of the query transformation is not available. In direct query, only few of the power query transformation is not available. But in live, the power query transformation itself is not available. Okay, you will not have the transform data when you're connecting to the live. The transform data option is not visible at all. Okay, it will be grayed out. Okay, power query transformation option will be grayed out.
Okay.
Okay, it will be grayed out. You cannot see any of the options using transformations. So power query concept is not available when you do it on the live connect, when you connect on the live connection to the models. So then where do we do the operations? Where do we change the data? Like suppose if you wanted to do the column name change, or column data type change, or suppose if you wanted to remove the null value, everything happens at the back end, that is on the model level. Okay, all the transformations like column name change, column name changes, data type changes will only be happening at the back end, that is model level. Okay, so in terms of any changes you wanted, So suppose when you import on live connection, okay, you would be using, you cannot create column, you cannot create table, you cannot change the data type of the columns, you cannot do any Power Query transformation. If you wanted any that kind of requirement, you have to reach out back to the SSAS model developers, or who has multidimensional model developers who has built the models, and ask them to do it and change the like let us know once the change has been done. Then you will be like refreshing you will be connecting to the models again, and you will be checking on those changes. You will not have any that facilities, and that is what I said, Power BI is not fully functional in that case. Okay, and modeling will never happen. So in this case, one more, so modeling will happen here in direct query. Modeling is possible, you can do the relationship, modeling is possible. The modeling will takes place in the Power BI itself in for direct query, but in live query, modeling is not possible, you cannot do it. It is also happening at the back end, only read mode is available for us, modeling is not possible,
Okay.
only read mode. Okay, so these are the differences when you compare direct query and live connection. Any questions?
No, that's clear.
Okay. Okay, yeah, and as I said, we cannot create any of the columns, but measures can be created. Measures can be created on live connection, but columns cannot be created. But in direct query, columns and measures both can be created. Okay, so that is also one of the advantage and the disadvantage. So this is all about the concepts which we saw, and I guess you got a clear idea where do we use and when do we use it. So most of the time this will be decided by the architect who will be performing on the like a project, or he will decide which has to go, whether it is import mode, based on because they will have a idea, they will know from end to end what has to be done. Okay, so they will decide usually like it should be import mode, or it should be direct query, or it should be a live query. In real time scenarios, I'm just giving an example. But if you suppose if you're onboarded to support projects, okay, when you're onboarded to support project, support plus developing project, there would be a few projects called support plus developing. So when you're onboarded into that such kind of projects, so there would be a small enhancement coming. Enhancement in the sense, there would be like a small reports where you have to connect to the database and bring that visualizations, or bring some of the tables, columns into the report. In that case, at that times it will be dependent on you, like which you'll be connecting, like which mode you'll be connecting, either import mode or a direct query or a live connections. Okay, at that time again it's not huge, the requirement will not be heavy, it will be very simple. It's just because since you will be supporting plus you will be on the development part, it will be requirement will be simple. So at that time also, most of the time you will go to the import mode, and also there will be a few of the architect in that project also, or the who will be helping, or the domain SME will be there who will be guiding. You can go to this mode, you can go to this, so there is no need to get like worry that which I have to choose and what I have to choose. So there will be they will be the person who knows the business architecture, who knows the data warehouse architecture, who will help us out in that way. Okay, so that is about the different types of connectivity modes which we have, and when do we choose it, and how does it work on the each different sources. Okay, so this is the concept. So this after this concept, after this use like real case scenarios which we saw, the next we would be doing is from tomorrow the complete Power Query concept. So we will be connecting directly to the SQL server which we have imported, that adventurous works. So the concept has been cleared, the major concept which we have to understand. So from tomorrow what we do is like we will connect to the database using different dimension and factorial table for our SQL server which we imported, that PAK file, and we will start working on it, and completely we will see on the Power Query end what are the different Power Query options we have, what is Power Query, and what is, you would have heard M query or M language, what is M language. So we will all look into those options and do the transformations and check out we can explore in the Power Query for the next set of days. Okay,
Okay.
yeah, any other questions?
No, I'm fine till now.
Okay. Yeah, hi Rohit. I could see you joined. Is this your first class? Okay. Okay, so Rohit, to give you an overall, right, we started this class sometime last week. So this is our, I guess it's a fourth class. Okay. So if we have actually finished a demo session, and after that we have finished the introduction. And once the introduction has been completed, like introduction to Power BI and why it is used and where it is used, all those introduction has been completed. And after this introduction, we have done the installation part, like installation of the files, installation of the tools, and installation of the application, which we required for the complete demo session for this training session, for the complete entire training session. And after that, we started connecting to the databases and explored the major options and also seeing the important concepts. Okay, so to give you an overall, you can just connect with the management and take over the sessions has been recorded. So ask them for the session recordings, and you can have a picture of the what has happened and the last uh, few classes. So maybe this is the first time you are joining, and whatever we had this conversation, right? This would be like maybe it few advanced, like for you it would be like too much, because you, since you have not known attended the previous concept, so for you it would be like a little heavy. So just go through the training videos of before a few sessions, last 3 or 4 sessions, and then if you have any questions on that, then you can discuss on the next coming session. Okay. Okay, guys, if there is no questions, then let's meet up tomorrow. Thank you.